This is Comic Geek Speak, episode 1835, Spider-Man No Way Home movie review.
Welcome to Comic Geek Speak. I'm Ian Levinstein.
I'm Shane Kelly.
I'm Adam Murdo.
I'm Chris Everly.
And I love that anyone on the video side got to see jazz hands out the wazoo to start this episode off as joining us this episode for the Spider-Man No Way Home movie review. Friends of the show, Comfort, Love, and Adam Withers. How are you guys?
Hello.
Hey, we're doing great.
We're so happy to be here. We enjoyed the movie. We're excited.
Excellent. Well, we are excited as well, and happy to have a nice big crew here to discuss a nice end of year, kind of like a good capper on the year in general, like a nice happy movie to see in theaters with a little bit of tragedy thrown in, just like this year.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
exactly. Go figure. But
just a smidge.
just a smidgen.
Looking
just a little bit.
forward and looking backward at the same time.
Exactly. Well, we'll get into the movie and more as we get into this episode. But of course, the usual reminder that we are brought to you by you, and you with the thumbs up over at patreon.com/Comic Geek Speak. This is our final recording of the year. And I want to just once again put a huge thank you out there to everyone who has supported us all year long here on the on the show, as we would not be anything without that support. And going into 2022, we are very hopeful for continued support and to put out some damn fine episodes for all of you who are interested in listening and interested in continuing to make this show happen. So thank you so much over at patreon.com/Comic Geek Speak.
Here.
You're the best. Wee.
Thank you.
Yep. And of course, traditional donations are still available at comicgeekspeak.com/donate.php over at the PayPal end, or just send us an iTunes review and let people know what you think of what you hear, or let your cousin Joe know. Either way. So good times. Spider-Man. Excelsior. Oh my God. It's been
There was so many Spider-Mans.
I know.
I enjoyed all the Spider-Mans.
Exactly. And spoilers begin now.
Just gonna say,
by the way.
spoilers!
Exactly.
Yeah.
Spoilers
Look
begin
out!
now,
If
ladies and
Kevin
gentlemen.
were in fact here, he'd probably say something about Nicholas Hammond right about now.
You know what? I was
Yeah.
really hoping he'd be in the background somewhere, just that you could pick him out, but
Well,
no.
that's just it too. Like I fully expected like the bleed to include like Spider-Man over and from Japan, and like
Yeah.
maybe Nicholas Hammond, and maybe get some other ones in there. But
That guy from the Brady Bunch movie who did the voice in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon.
there
Oh,
you
yeah.
go.
Yep.
There
I
you go.
knew that they wouldn't.
He was
but
also on, he played the son in Starman TV show.
Well, there you go.
God, I forget his name.
A very different Starman than the comic book Starman.
Yeah,
I might
yeah.
add.
Yeah,
the
based
voice
on the
actor
movie.
The voice actor for Schlubby Peter B. Parker from
Mhm.
Spider-Verse
Uh-huh.
would actually be a pretty good actor for a schlubby Spider-Man from an
It's
alternate
true.
universe.
That is a
Sure.
very good point. That is a very good
He
point.
could
Nick
have
from
played
New
his
Girl.
own Spider-Man. It would have been great.
Well,
Yep.
and did I hear right? Totally off topic, but did I hear right that, and I didn't realize this, that the woman who played Spider-Gwen in
Mhm.
that movie is
Haley Steinfeld.
Kate Bishop?
Yeah,
Mhm.
you are 100% correct.
Unbelievable.
CB2.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that is the case, and yeah, I she's all over the place now.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, let's get things started with the guests first, and initial impressions on Spider-Man: No Way Home. Comfort and Adam, the floor is yours.
I feel like that was the movie that we needed here at the end of the year because it was so delightful and it was so fun.
It was wonderful. I'll be honest straight out. I was not looking forward to it. I'm not typically a big fan of multiverse stuff, not necessarily because I don't think you can do a good story, but I think it's really easy to do a bad story.
It's too tempting. It's too delicious.
Yeah,
to do
it is
that bad
catnip
story.
for lazy writers. And it usually becomes just a cameo fest and it's just about the Easter eggs.
What it is it becomes a box checking thing. Like I checked this box, that box, the other box.
Right.
Are you happy that I checked the boxes? But this actually had heart.
Yeah, the cameos were actual characters.
Right.
All the people that they brought in had something to contribute. I said after that this was the best possible version of the movie I didn't think I wanted, but I loved it.
And I would say not just that, is that even did we lose? Okay, just making sure that we didn't.
No. We're good. We're just putting up images.
Good. We're just going to show other pictures. All right. I see what we're doing. Word. But the characters of the other Spider-Man so wonderfully mirror not just what they did in the movies, but the public consciousness of the feelings of those movies. So even Andrew Garfield was a little bit of a sad Spider-Man, not just because of losing Gwen Stacy, but because of how we feel about his unfortunate role that he had to do.
They tapped into the existing feelings the audience had about those films. We look back at the Raimi Spider-Man and they're pretty much universally acclaimed, right? The third one, everybody kind of agrees that the third one wasn't great, but there are still defenders of the third one.
Dance, emo dance. Oh yeah.
But and then we look at the Garfield era, the Amazing films, and everybody pretty much agrees those were terrible movies. But most people think like Garfield was a good Spider-Man. He was just a good Spider-Man in some terrible movies, and
she was a good Gwen.
Right, and the scenes with Tobey were all sort of nostalgic and golden and wistful, and the scenes with Garfield were all sort of regretful and mournful, and because we already felt that way about those films, we brought those feelings with us into the portrayals and the ways that they were used in this movie.
Yep. So there's always minor nitpicks, but really, thank you, Marvel. Now don't go back to the buffet.
Right. You've had enough. It was wonderful.
Back.
Yeah.
You managed to do 2 multiverse Spider-Man movies that were both excellent.
Yeah.
Good.
Stop.
Well, other than the continued Spider-Verse, because we are getting.
Well, sure.
Right. That'll be fine. But what I don't want to see is Marvel being like, well, what if everything was multiverse?
Yeah.
Which it very well may be. And I have to emotionally get myself ready for that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Coming soon, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Coming soon. A reminder that it's coming soon.
Yep.
Chris, initial impressions.
Oh, wow. Well, one of the best Marvel films they've produced yet, in my humble opinion. 2 things that struck me right off the bat. A reminder of how Willem Dafoe is an utterly terrifying Green Goblin.
Yes.
And truly captured once again that villain, and props that they didn't put him in that stupid outfit really again, and he actually was scary just with that hood over his face, his head. So again, I loved his performance in the original, minus the dopey costume, and this one I thought was just as powerful and terrifying. And 2, this movie, when the way this movie ended, we now have the Spider-Man of the comic again.
Yeah.
So as much as I enjoy, I think Tom Holland is the overall best Spider-Man we've had so far, both the Peter Parker side and the Spider-Man side. But he was kind of had that whole Tony Stark aspect of the character they were kind of slowly moving away from, and the Avengers and all that stuff. And I thought at the end of this movie, right down to the costume he made by himself with a sewing machine in his rundown, dilapidated, isolated apartment. So now what I like is that it seems like they're now moving towards the real essence of the characters he's always been in the book, which is he's kind of on his own. He's got the bottom. He's got to take care of himself completely. He really doesn't have many real support. And we've talked in other episodes about how much we kind of had mixed feelings about kind of putting him in Tony Stark's world. And I think it's almost like a graduation that, now he is truly the Spider-Man that we all know and love. So,
Yep.
you know, those are just two quick thoughts, but this movie to me was on every level absolutely delightful. Furthermore, it was the first. I've been to a lot of movies during the pandemic, but most of them had nobody in the theater. This theater was packed.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Same with
And
ours.
people were cheering, clapping. When the two other Spider-Man appeared, I mean, people were just going bananas.
Mhm.
So I think they pretty much did everything right in this movie, right down to J. Jonah Jameson basically being Alex Jones selling his supplements.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um,
The supplements. Oh God. I
So
died.
you know, one charlatan to another. So,
Yep.
yeah, this is easily, I think, one of the best films Marvel has produced yet.
Yep.
Definitely the case. Yep. And Murd, over to you.
Well, I thought it was outstanding. It was extremely entertaining. And as usual, my own multiverse doppelganger, Adam, and Comfort have put forth some excellent points to start us off here, with which I wholeheartedly agree. The meta level, I mean, well, your point is well taken that multiverse stories can be seen as licenses to just do shallow fan service and pass it off as storytelling. There was not any of that in this case. The multiverse cameos had real depth and substance, hero and villain alike. So they avoided that pitfall nicely. They did a marvelous job of teasing out what was best and most beloved of the other Spider franchises, and skirted around, or in some cases, very brassily confronted directly what was worst about them. Damn eels.
Mhm.
And just, yes, they functioned wonderfully. The other Spider-Men and their rogues galleries functioned beautifully as characters. There was a great deal of pathos in their utterances, and to Chris's point, Defoe continues to be a superior Norman Osborn. Everything he said was on point, not only with the way he was written in the original Raimi film, but also in the comics at points. There's kind of the dynamic of strength and weakness within him, how the Goblin despises weakness in his own alternate self and also in his opponent, Peter. It was just really enjoyable on that level. I thought it did a good job in the first act of dealing with the Spider-Man movies of the Home trilogy that preceded it. So it kind of closed that chapter effectively before becoming basically a completely different movie by the end of it all. I did get a bit disengaged when I realized close to the end that we were basically watching One More Day, the movie. And that sticks in my craw a bit. And please understand, I'm not being fanboy butthurt here about that story. Issues that we of the fan community had with that story and Joe Quesada's personal motives for pushing it through.
Same.
I'm more thinking about J. Michael Straczynski's concerns, as he publicly voiced after he reluctantly scripted that story, and how he thought it was weak storytelling to just do this. Global amnesia is not a very strong device.
Was he in the
Let's put that
special
first.
thanks, Murd? I'm trying to remember. Was
He
JMS?
did.
Okay.
He
Straczynski
and
was there,
Quesada
yeah.
He
both
was.
did, as a matter of fact.
Good.
So yeah, that's where kind of the logic of the movie broke down for me, when the spell was cast to remove all knowledge of Peter Parker from everyone, because among other holes that I saw in that notion, number one, wouldn't it just have been as effective to have everyone forget about Spider-Man as Peter Parker if the spell that's bringing all these multiverse doppelgangers through was contingent on people in different universes knowing that they were one and the same? And for another thing, wouldn't Doctor Strange have to cast that spell throughout the entire multiverse, so that the other Spider-Men, Garfield and Maguire, would have to go home to universes that no longer remembered their versions of Peter Parker?
Yeah.
So, yeah, Holland Parker would basically be condemning his brother Spider-Man to the same sad and lonely fate he has chosen for himself, and that's kind of not cool either. So, yeah,
I can
a
answer
few
that.
wrinkles in my enjoyment of the whole thing emerged at that point. But other than that, even the creative decisions I disagreed with were just executed so well and with such deftness that it didn't really mar my enjoyment in any significant degree, other than the one that I just mentioned. And so, yeah, I haven't enjoyed myself at a superhero movie this much in quite some time. There was stuff for the casual fan. There was stuff for the devoted fan. It was just a good time for everybody, and I'm thrilled that we're able to end the year talking about it.
Excellent. And we will get to you explaining that, Adam, after we get to Shane and myself. So stand by on that one. Shane, over to you.
I found it extremely enjoyable. I thought it was fun, funny, action-packed, heartbreaking at parts. It really ran the entire gambit of emotions. It was a fitting end to a trilogy that kind of, I don't know, was always meant to be a trilogy, but I guess it was because everything's a trilogy. But I loved every aspect of the cameos we got. Like was said before, they actually had value. They actually had worth. It wasn't just there just for something to do. The villains actually wondered, once they realized what was happening, some of them actually weren't villainous and wanted to get better and get back home for whatever reasons and get another chance if they could. I absolutely loved Willem Dafoe's portrayal. He was absolutely terrifying. And I agree with Chris and what many others would think. While the costume in the first go around from the original one, it was horrendous. I often wonder what could have been seen if they would have just done the regular costume that we saw kind of mocked up with what looked like the Green Goblin all those years ago, and his performance, because like Chris said, with just that hood on, he really embodied the Goblin so much better than they did in the first film. I thought everybody's part was pretty well placed. I was very saddened that Aunt May died, but in Spider-Man's world, it does sort of make sense. There are times when he loses Aunt May. It does make me wonder if, that's exactly it for people watching it. That's exactly the mask that I'm talking about for Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder, and I want to go back to not only Homecoming, but also maybe a little bit of Civil War. I don't remember if he ever said anything about Uncle Ben, or was it just that everything that Aunt May's been through?
There was a suitcase. There was a suitcase.
Right.
There was.
Yeah, exactly. That
Ben's mentioned.
Yeah.
But I don't think that they knew what they wanted to do with Ben, so they left it really open, because Marvel movies, as much as sometimes we'd like to think that they're fully fleshed out beforehand.
Oh yeah, they're not.
A lot of like placeholders.
They're very good at
knowing
knowing
that.
They're very good at knowing where to leave space to find answers later.
Exactly.
And I like that they've incorporated all of this, again, thinking it's not always fleshed out, but as time progresses and things evolve, that they're able to mold this to fit their needs while it still makes perfect sense. I love that we got Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and their respective Spider-Mans with weight and time passing for both of them. I would love to see another now. I mean, I always, like was said before, I always thought Andrew Garfield was an excellent Spider-Man. And I thought Tobey Maguire was a pretty good Peter Parker, but I think Tom Holland is a great combination and able to carry both of them. But I would love to now see an Andrew Garfield Spider-Man with what happens now, with what has happened to him, how bitter and angry he had gotten, and what's going to happen next for him. I just thought it was absolutely, as much as it was predictable that he was going to be the one to save Michelle, it still was well worth it, and really felt heavy for him to do it. And now he can feel better about himself that, maybe he could save others, or just something that he wouldn't be quite as bitter anymore. It just, the entire movie from start to finish just was not only fun for fans and all those Easter eggs, but it was all well placed and given gravity, given weight to do so.
I start off with with the initial statement that this movie should not have worked. This movie had all the signature signs of a movie that was going to be overwrought and overstuffed, because what's happened in the past, what happens in the past, every single time they try to introduce more than 1 to 2 villains at a time into a movie, that movie bombs. That movie is trash. It's what happened with the Batman universe. It even happened in a way with the 70s Superman and 3 and 4, if you want to go that way. It happened the X-Men films when they tried to do too much. And the Spider-Man films as well. Especially Spider-Man 3 and Amazing Spider-Man 2 are pitch perfect examples of this, because we know why Raimi's 3 failed, because the Sony itself jammed Venom down his throat, and we're like, you need to do Venom whether you like it or not. He was not a fan of the character. He was not into the Spider-Man of that era. He was into the 70s and 80s Spider-Man, so that's the one that he wanted to bring. He wanted Sandman. He wanted to finish out the Green Goblin story with Harry, and that's it. Over in Amazing Spider-Man 2, you could have told an incredibly decent story with Electro. You had the opportunity. Instead, you got Superman 3.
And you had Jamie Foxx, too.
Exactly. You had Jamie Foxx. Yeah, terrific actor. In almost everything that he does, he brings it to the table. And yet they felt the need to also bring in the Green Goblin, and had one of the worst Green Goblin designs, even worse than, Mask Green Goblin.
And they threw away Gwen's character because Emma Stone was doing a wonderful job at that portrayal.
Exactly.
Just because that's what you expect in the comic, not because it was valuable for the story they were telling, but because you have to.
And you had yet another Spider-Man at the gravestone scene.
Yep.
There's a lot
and you almost had more than that. There is a deleted scene in Amazing Spider-Man 2 that you find online where they reveal that Peter's dad is alive. And he shows up at Gwen's grave as Peter is mourning Gwen.
It's a lot of this.
Yeah, and gives the power and responsibility speech again after.
This is the Campbell Scott character.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And gives the power and responsibility speech again, even though Ben in the Amazing Spider-Man universe already gave it, so he didn't need to do it again. And then they go on from there. They decided to cut that from the film graciously because I thought like that would have just been a step too far. Whatever, it is what it is.
Right.
We get a third Spider-Man movie here, and I'm gonna quote Dan Gavosden, friend of the show, Amazing Spider-Cast, in saying that we came into these set of movies thinking that they were skipping the origin, and little did we know they gave us a 3-movie origin of Peter Parker Spider-Man.
Right.
Because by the time this movie wraps, he's Spider-Man.
The Spider-Man we expect.
The Spider-Man
we're looking for.
Exactly.
It was Spider-Man Smallville.
Yes, you're right. Actually, only with this, we're more than likely going to get more than just a suit reveal at the end.
And more. And the suits that we see look better than a cosplayer could produce in their garage.
Yes, exactly. Yes, 100%.
Even though technically he was cosplaying at the end of that movie, I was like, wow. It's so lucky that he lives in the era of cosplay.
He lives in the era
of cosplay. A lot easier.
He can just put on YouTube and be like, "How do I make a spider suit?"
Exactly. He talked to some people from New York Comic Con. Like I was watching the Hawkeye show, and I have all those like cosplayers. I was like, "Oh, they 100% have all been to NYCC."
Yep. Yeah. Definitely the case, and yeah, I mean, he took the best of Andrew and Toby's costumes and meshed them into his own, without any of the raised webbing bullshit, and then he got himself a nice stitched costume. But we get Spider-Man 3.5, we get Amazing Spider-Man 2.5, and we get a Marvel Cinematic Universe Spider-Man all in one package here, because now those characters actually have conclusions that make sense for their individual characters, all while not soiling the story that is to be told of MCU Peter. It shouldn't have worked.
And not overdoing it. Yes. Not saturating the movie with their appearances.
Absolutely.
And not pushing it down your throat so much that you're exhausted by the end, right? They were intelligent about it. They didn't have to be too blunt or too obvious. They just let the dialogue be. Let them have these conversations. It felt very natural.
May I ask you, sir, if we're ready, do you want to go into what Murd was talking about?
Yeah. Let me just finish my final statement here and just say that again, shouldn't have worked. Super glad it did. The Sinister 5.5, I count Venom as a half. I think worked wonderfully in this, and it's one of my favorite MCU movies, possibly my favorite, and that I'm talking about above Endgame with that.
That's a big one.
It's really, really hard for me to think otherwise. And one final statement that how fitting is it that we conclude in a way Sam Raimi's Spider-Man and wish him farewell just in time for Sam Raimi to come back to superheroes with the Doctor Strange movie to come. I think that's going to be awesome.
Yep. Interesting.
That is
I didn't realize Raimi was directing that.
No, I didn't either. Wow.
Yep, he stepped in. The original director stepped out, and before they even started filming, and then they went to Raimi and asked, "Do you want to do it?" And he thought long and hard about it, and he said, "20 years is long enough. I might as well come back and give it the go." And
Good.
now there he is. So yeah.
Wow.
And this is after Sony really dicked him over, because
Yes,
he did
indeed.
want to do more Spider-Man
Mhm.
after 3. He felt bad about how everything ended.
Yeah.
And wanted to give people a good send-off, and that never happened.
Exactly. Let's go back to what Murd brought up earlier.
Okay.
Adam, the floor is yours.
All right, so
Okay.
Adam, restate what Murd said, and then
And this is not to say that I don't have some beats of the movie that I feel could have been handled better.
Sure.
It wasn't perfect, but what is? But the idea that Doctor Strange's spell would have to affect the entire multiverse, the answer I feel to that is that this was the center of the problem, right? This is where the hole is, this is where the cracks are forming, and this is where everybody's tumbling into. If this world,
it's the focal point.
It's the focal point. If you remove the problem here, there's no problem. So if nobody here knows that Peter is Spider-Man, then that's so like part of the problem, as I understood it, is not simply that, you know, the spell has gone wonky, but also that so many people know that it's overloading everything. So by first completing the spell, which just, you know, like closes the loop on the problem in the first place, and second, by drastically reducing the number of people who have any idea that Peter is Spider-Man, you reduce the scale of the problem such that normal magic can do the rest of the job. At least that was what I took from
the
it.
takeaway from, you know, and
Right.
also I
if
think
you've got a leak in the roof, you don't necessarily have to replace the entire roof.
Right.
Depending on the nature of the leak,
now,
you can just plug
they
that
might
leak
have
and
to
be done.
replace the roof in the Doctor Strange movie.
That
but
may be
this
where
was
we're
the leak
going
in the roof.
next.
So yeah, I mean, I think another thing is too that, you know, I'm always sort of careful about now having had to, you know, do a lot of writing in my time, is that I have to be like, what's my audience actually going to get? And so sometimes the more simple I can make something and the more heartfelt I can make something, because I find the audience can usually grasp emotional concepts easier than like metaphysical or, you know, intellectual, scientific, whatever concepts. And I'm like, how do I make it so everybody loves it as much as they could? Even the grandmas, like there was grandmas, and, you know, I stepped out and these ladies must have been like, you know, 60, 65 years old. And they're coming here to see Spider-Man, you know, and they're in the bathroom after the movie. And they're talking about Spider-Man. I'm like, what fucking world do I live in that grandmas are watching Spider-Man and loving it?
And having conversations.
And having conversations about Spider-Man? I'm in the Twilight Zone. This is amazing.
Well, they clearly relate to Ned's Wawa. You know, that's
exactly. Yeah. So it's fascinating, you know, what you kind of have to do to straddle that fence. And it is sometimes frustrating being fans like we all are, where we're like, and actually this and that and the other thing would be the case, but I'll let you go, buddy, because I'm not going to overcomplicate it.
I think that the idea of a spell that makes everyone forget you is central to what Peter's dilemma has been, not just here, but in every Spider-Man franchise. He's been a guy who feels alone, who's looking for a father figure, looking for a family, and trying to build one. And that solitude, that fear of loneliness, that fear of abandonment has haunted him forever. Most of the characters in this movie are either attempted or failed father figures for some version of Peter Parker.
Yeah.
You know, Norman Osborn, Dr. Octavius. If you look at Sandman in the third movie, he wasn't Peter's father figure, but he was a failed father figure or a failed father. Trying to do better. So this theme keeps following this character throughout. And so at the end, having to confront that fear of being so completely alone that literally nobody knows who you are.
Yeah.
And being able to do that. And then coming out in the epilogue and being okay, being able to stand on his own and not need, like, he's still sad, of course, but he doesn't need that.
Yeah.
That speaks to a huge growth in his character. And so you had the nature of the spell is overly simplistic and not a perfect choice, but I think emotionally for the growth arc that he was going through, it helps tie a lot of things together.
And I wanted those for too, that in the comics, that spell and that situation with what was the name of the comic?
One More Day.
One More Day.
Yeah.
Balls. Terrible. Awful. And it was really poorly done. And I think Marvel does a lot of this where, like, it still might not be my favorite, but like I'm going to be frank, I did not like Civil War in the comics. I hated it.
Very poorly.
And that's for a lot of reasons. But I felt like the Marvel movies fixed at least some of that.
You almost start
all of
wondering,
it,
is there somebody involved at Marvel Films who is making it their goal to go through and take some of the, like, rehabilitate poorly done stories from
they're like, there's a kernel of this that could work.
Yeah,
What's
there's
the part
something
that
there.
could work if we sort of rejiggered it this way?
Yeah.
And I always think, as you know, a creator, that is an interesting thing. Even when Adam and I were young, one of the things that brought us together was trying to rewrite the Star Wars prequels in our minds.
Well, and bringing it to that, I think one of the reasons that, you know, a One More Day storyline works so well here is the fact that we never really got that type of Spider-Man in the MCU before. You know, our entry point to him was a happy Spider-Man that you know, basically got what he wanted. You know, he got to be an Avenger. He got to have his family. He got to have his friends. He immediately got people who knew who he was. And to now sort of take that back a step and be like, okay, now let's try this and see how that works in the MCU. And now we get the opportunity to see whether or not it works and where they're going to go next, makes that storyline work better. And most importantly, there was no deal with the frickin' devil.
Yeah.
I think the more important thing wasn't just no devil. I think the most important thing that made it work was that there were real stakes, right? Something had gone wrong and needed to be fixed.
And it was sort of his fault.
Right. His life was getting screwed up, but more importantly, everybody who loved him was getting screwed over by this. He was trying to make life better for a lot of people, not just himself. It wasn't just that selfish impulse. And he did pull back from going through with the spell. He realized, like, hey, this is probably a bad idea. There's better things I could do. Like Doctor Strange having that, wait, you didn't try anything else.
Yeah.
Like, that's
But
great.
may I say, I love that it's kid logic.
It is kid logic. It makes perfect sense when you're 17.
He's a little boy.
Yeah.
And they do a good job with Doctor Strange, like dealing the fact that he's a kid. And, you know, as somebody who's taught a lot of kids in our lifetime, like, yeah, that's the thing. You have to sort of unpack the kid logic to really understand and then get on that same level as that, you know, other
It's like,
person that you're
in
dealing
D&D terms, they can have a high intelligence, but their wisdom is limited.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I was definitely glad that they showed that epilogue of him being okay with himself, because what I didn't want to happen the way the movie ended was him to feel so alone and defeated in that way that he went down the path that Andrew Garfield's character went down anyway.
Yeah.
So to come to that epilogue and kind of take the deep breath as he walked into the battery department and make the costume and jump out the window. Okay, now not only is he okay with himself and he's going to be okay here forward, but he took that responsibility that was bestowed upon him from his aunt, especially during this movie, and grew up in those last few minutes of all the action.
And on top of that, Jay, the fact that he, like you said, when he goes to the cafe to see MJ and Ned, and, you know, ultimately he just walks away, like he has this moment with her, which gives the fans some hope they might reconnect, but they might not reconnect. They may go in a totally different direction. Maybe they'll bring Gwen into it in the future, or they could go into maybe we won't even see her again.
Sure.
You
And
probably will, but,
I
you know.
think there's a beautiful thing too, where you're reaching the audience on a visceral level too, because how many times do we leave something like high school that's a certain level of comfort, and I have these friends and I'm going to do these things and I have my life planned out for me. And then I go to college and these friends end up not really being my friends for the rest of my life. I meet these other people, I learn these other things, my life goes in this different direction, and that's just life.
Well,
I think
there's also a reason that the Spider-Man that we all know more than anything else, you know, we brought this up before on the show, especially when we were reviewing the older comics. Chris, in particular, I'll point out, he wasn't a high school student very long. You know,
No.
and it was because the character had to grow, and we had to grow past that in order for him to actually be a true hero and to learn and adapt and evolve. And now here we are with college Spidey. It all makes perfect sense.
And even if they decide to reconnect him again with his friends, now you're going to have a Peter that has to wrestle with, do I ever tell them all that I know about them? Do I ever tell them how much history we actually have? And if I don't, and they find out, well, that's going to be even worse. So what do? Do I just ignore it and let them alone and go in a completely different direction? Or do I risk it and hope for the best? And inevitably for Peter, that will become disastrous at some point.
I need to bring up my one issue I had with the spell. It's a little bit similar to what Murd brought up, but not quite. And I'm talking the technology end. So this spell just magically makes all texts and videos taken at Spider-Man.
I thought of that too.
Still photographs and text.
Don't think about it.
Yeah.
And the display in the high school that they made up.
Right.
Yeah, I thought of that too.
Like MJ just looks at her phone and is like, "Why do I have all these pictures of this random guy?" Like
or it's just blurry. Yeah.
It was a part of Straczynski's argument all those years ago when Quesada couldn't say anything better than "It's magic. We don't have to explain it." In response.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, now we actually have that excuse because hey, it was magic. We don't have to explain it.
It'll only go so far, right? I think it's one thing to accept that magic was able to wipe out what would be a few years worth of connections and relationships, as opposed to an entire marriage, the span of, I mean, it's always fuzzy Marvel time, but upward of a decade of time spent together and all of that history and all of that connection. And there's so much exponentially more to deal with it. It's a lot harder to swallow.
Well, and I think it sort of speaks to a bit of like, whether or not fridge logic is going to come into play with something, right? Because fridge logic is, I watch something, I enjoy it, and then I'm going to the fridge after the movie and I'm like, wait a second.
Hold on.
And
how did that happen?
Fridge logic, I think, will come into play more often, like the less you were confident in the movie overall. Like there's a lot you can get away with if people are having fun and they're entertained and it made enough sense.
It's similar to Endgame in that, like the magic raises questions. The time travel in Endgame was not perfect. There were some holes. There was
a lot of times where they're like, hey, don't think about it.
Well, no, I think that ultimately the way that Endgame finished, the way that Endgame ended, and the moments that it gave you and the catharsis that it gave you as an audience, ultimately you don't care, right? Is it perfect? Is it without holes? No, but I don't care because the feeling that I got from it is more important than whatever little missteps were made. And I'd say the same thing here. This was a very cathartic movie. This is probably the most cathartic film I've seen since Endgame.
Right.
And that feeling and the joy and the journey that I was given is more valuable to me than a whole free plot.
Right. But I will say, the more you do this, which is why, again, Marvel, please don't keep going back to the buffet. It lessens that impact. Yeah. You can get away with it some, but the more you do it, the more people just get exhausted by things. So you have to be very careful.
It didn't feel like the holes that came up in this movie came from being lazy.
The
more they go back to this the harder it is to forget.
Exactly.
Oh, absolutely the case. But let's talk about something that this movie did amazing, and that is correcting horrible decisions when it comes to costumes.
I was so glad that they gave him some semblance of what his costume should be.
Yes, Electro needs that sort of issue, and I kind of love how they did it too. The way that they played with it, that the electricity was different in this reality, and it allowed him to get back a corporeal form, one that didn't look like he again walked out of Superman 3. I'm going to continue to say that. They decided to go Richard Pryor with him, whole hog in Amazing Spider-Man 2, and then they corrected that decision here. And we get, the great thing with the containment suit with the arc reactor, and you get the lightning bolt effect up top with him. Oh, it was just so good.
And I like how he even realized, back then I looked like this with this, and now I kind of like this.
Yep.
They didn't forget where they were either.
Right. There's a lot of lampshades.
He wasn't a villain. That was the thing I liked about Electro in this, is that he's not out to do bad things.
Mm-hmm.
He just kind of feels like, I like who I am here.
Yeah.
And I don't like who I was there. And this is kind of an awesome thing that I've got. Why do I have to give it up?
And that's also why
I have to walk away.
Oh yeah, and that's why I'm super glad that he had that heart to heart with Andrew Spidey near the end.
Yes.
Of course, also dropping the excellent line of you help out poor people and
you live in Queens, you help poor people. I thought you were black.
Yeah, exactly. So okay, well, Miles is out there somewhere, so
right.
But
well, they know what they're gonna do.
Of course.
And
I loved Andrew Garfield's perfect. I'm sorry.
Yep. And then the updated Green Goblin costume.
Oh yeah.
Not since the days of the Scarlet Spider has a tattered hoodie been such an effective.
Yeah.
Well, I loved how they had him
nice.
when they recover him and he's in that
Very nice.
green and purple outfit. They just have him on the street clothes he's wearing.
Yep.
But Willem Dafoe, his face is so expressive as an actor.
Oh yeah.
And the way he contorts his face into these menacing, really terrifying visages.
Right.
I mean,
but
just that
even
fast.
so menacing,
Sad.
but then so sad.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
you feel for him immediately, and the way that he can move in between. And I don't know if we've talked about Doc Ock much, and
we're getting
Molina.
there.
Yeah,
Also,
Yeah. I mean, Alfred Molina is an acting tour de force, and he always has been.
Everybody knows.
But oh my freaking God, the de-aging! I am so thoroughly impressed with what they did. He looked like he walked out of Spider-Man 2.
yes.
Yeah, and it didn't at all get in the way of any of his emoting for the film. Same with Defoe. Like, it was there, it softened them, but it wasn't a distraction from their performance.
Yeah,
the performance came through, and that's the most important.
And the great thing about Defoe was that I'm sorry, Murd, go ahead.
I was just saying that I didn't even realize they did anything digitally to de-age them. So that's just how effective it was.
Absolutely.
Now, please continue, Chris.
Delightfully subtle.
The other great thing about Defoe, and they did this in the original film, but even more so here, they really captured the brutality and the violence of the Spider-Man Green Goblin fights, which are not like any of his other villains.
Yes.
Like, he was kicking the crap out of Spider-Man essentially in this movie.
Oh yeah.
Which is really as it should be, because Peter always has a hard time fighting Norman for a whole host of reasons. And it was fitting that Norman was the one who killed Aunt May too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But like when he's like taking Peter, like smashing up against the ceiling and down to the floor, and that's as it should be. Those fight scenes were really well done.
But I also like towards the end when Tom Holland's Peter Parker is really raging on him and so close to going over the edge. It's Tobey Maguire that steps in.
Yes.
Even though Goblin turns on him as well, rightfully so, because of what he is at that point. But still it's the essence of Spider-Man to step in and do that and make you realize you still have a responsibility. Don't go over this line. This is not the way we do it.
There's so much power in the faces.
A word.
Yep.
Yes.
Say that again, Adam.
I was basically same as what Murd was saying. It's the power of the faces, their expressions in those moments where they're just looking. When Tom Holland picks up that glider and starts marching toward him, you can see so much that he's going through. And when Tobey steps in and they're just staring each other down, they don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
because the movie already established everything. It gave you everything you needed to understand what's happening in that moment.
Less
and it
skilled
didn't feel-
creators would feel like they had to say
Yeah.
something. And that really, that's just the nutshell of the whole movie. Less skilled creators would have wanted to put more stuff in, have more callbacks, do more little like quippy things, but instead they let things breathe.
Yeah. And the bits that they did put in, like for instance,
Yes.
Andrew Garfield cracking the back of Tobey Maguire.
Yes. Cute,
That's-
cute.
That
Yeah.
scene was pitch perfect, not just because we know why he did it, because he almost got Tobey Maguire almost got replaced in Spider-Man 2 due to a back problem. He almost got replaced by eventually Mephisto. Like they had that Gyllenhaal had been cast as the replacement, and it was going to go forward, and they decided not to in the end. They let him heal a little bit, and then he came back. But just the entire scene of watching Andrew Garfield do it, and then afterwards, like, oh yeah, that feels pretty good.
Yeah.
Can we talk about how great the Spider Bros were?
Oh my god!
Like those three guys together
Yes.
had such chemistry. They played
did.
it so well, and they even had, Toby as the oldest brother was like the calm, sort of nurturing
Youth
presence.
pastor.
Exactly.
The cool youth
And
pastor.
then
Garfield as the troubled, morose middle child.
Yeah, but with
Yeah.
all the heart, trying so hard to figure out where his place is and being so lost a lot of the time. And then, Holland, the scrappy, young, plucky kid who thinks he knows everything, and the older brothers are just shaking their heads.
Yeah.
And it was such a good decision to have Toby initially be outside the costume. Like I wanted that to at least be one of them, to show up not in costume at first, and then the line as Chris said about the youth pastor, and then he just lifts it up like, oh okay, all right, good, just making sure.
Yep.
And it speaks to what this movie's about. Like, this is the core of why it works, is because they're not just cameos. They are fully fledged characters, and they also serve a purpose for the arc of Tom Holland, because Garfield represents a Spider-Man who isn't Peter Parker anymore, who's completely given up that entire side of his life.
Right.
And so he does show up in costume, and it takes him a second to take the mask off. And Toby is somebody who's kind of got it together, and like, it was hard, and there was a lot of struggle, but you can make it work. So he shows up as Peter first. Everything about this feels like it was thought out. It all adds up to these feelings that are driving
and it
a
is
story
so
that's
very
about what it
emotionally
means
driven
to be Peter Parker.
Yep.
And they all had different backgrounds to get them to this point, yet they all come together to the same ending of great power, great responsibility, the greater good over themselves. It all comes to fruition individually, but all together as they discuss what's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah. And that the struggle is worth it, that all the loss that we have all had to go through, ultimately, it's worth it. It is worthwhile. And the things that we have endured have also allowed us to do these incredible things for others. And that does come back to you, that you can have a happy future with some version of MJ somewhere.
Yeah. And plus I'll point out, even though this is just an artist's interpretation of it, that we essentially got the three-way point in the movie, like Peter. Oh no, I'm sorry. I mean Peter Parker. That's kind of all of us. It was so beautifully done. I loved it.
I was just going to say that I like how the MCU will allow themselves those cute little moments, and it's so contrasting to the DC movies, especially the Zack Snyder DC movies. But Ed's grandma or mother, she wants him to get the Andrew Garfield to get the spider web out of the corner. And so therefore this is the reason that he has to crawl along the ceiling
that whole
and stuff
scene
like
is
that.
so good.
Like, it's these like little normal human things and tips that we all have that makes them into the relatable people that they need.
That's the essence of Marvel, though, at its best. That's why it was so successful initially, because they would do stuff like that.
And they never forgot. And because they worked it so hard in the beginning, every creator who comes into Marvel understands that this is a world where that stuff can happen, right? So as opposed to if you're stepping into a DC movie as a creator, you're like, how much am I able to get away with? How much can I do? What's okay here?
Right.
When you walk into a Marvel franchise film, you know that there's an expectation that these are human people.
Right. And now, Chris, what were you going to say?
Oh, so yeah. I just had a fun sort of continuity question, for everybody. So with the way the movie ends, so all the villains are returned to their universes. So Norman Osborn is cured. Does that mean Harry never died, for example? Because he's put back at the point when he was about to be killed fighting Spider-Man.
Quite possible.
That would have ramifications for all these universes.
We are talking about the cure that they administered to him either didn't work at all, as it didn't the first time they tried it on him earlier in the film, or B, it worked only temporarily, and the Goblin persona reemerged, and he died on schedule.
I like to think that we're talking about infinite multiverses, so there are an infinite number of Norman Osborn.
That's a good point.
But this Norman Osborn is not necessarily this Tobey's Norman Osborn. So even though this one was cured, he gets to go back to a universe where he gets to rewrite the ending of that story.
Yeah, as does Otto.
But that
because Otto's now in control of his.
As does Electro.
As does Sandman.
Yep,
and
Lizard.
Oh, what a wonderful way to speak to a history of superhero movies feeling the need to murder their villain in the third act. So you know what? Let's build an entire film around the idea that that's dumb and not at all heroic. And if we have the ability to help them, we have the responsibility to help them.
And it also speaks to, I think, where the culture is coming to with crime and punishment and all that kind of stuff that we've had to start coming to grips with the realities of, not just the fantasy
that a real hero doesn't necessarily leap to violence and murder as the first
revenge,
solution.
Right?
Revenge is not the solution.
How respectful to Sam Raimi's trilogy was it that Sandman was not immediately a villain as well? Because that was one of the best parts of Spider-Man 3 is the fact that he was that Flint was a very nuanced character, and he always has been in the comics.
Yep. I loved the scene near the end where Peter defeats Marco by just saying, "I forgive you," and then he just blows away.
Yeah,
a beautiful still moment.
It was wonderful.
Now, two things I'm thinking of that I don't want to forget about. One is when you get to the end of the movie and Peter's at May's gravesite. If you noticed, the year is blocked out by a leaf.
Yeah, I saw that. Yep.
I love how, partially because of the pandemic and the rearranging of all of Marvel's plans, you're now getting time caught up with where Endgame ends and everything that happened afterwards is happening. So you had this movie take place right after Far From Home, which closes a gap. You had the pandemic push everything back, which closes a gap. So now you're almost caught up to probably close to where we are now, soon to be where everything will end up. And now you'll sync time back up, even having that 5-year gap.
Oh, and you know what? Since you mentioned it, Shane, before I forget, one of my favorite little tidbits in this was explaining that Steven is no longer, Sorcerer Supreme. Because obviously, they would have given it to Wong within the 5 years because who's going to be Sorcerer Supreme? It makes perfect sense.
The other thing I absolutely loved, and it's a little bit hinted at in the 5th episode of Hawkeye and soon to be the next episode, you go all the way back to the beginning of this movie and you have Matt Murdock show up. Which I absolutely want to have happen from the time Far From Home ended, and to bring it into the Netflix characters, just absolutely flabbergasted that they did it.
Well, what's great about that?
Very good lawyer.
Oh yeah.
What's great about that? But that is, I mean, I don't know. I don't pretend to know what the internal politics are with the different studios, but you got the sense that they were purposely ignoring all the Netflix stuff for a period of time.
He didn't like them.
Well, if that's true, that's petty and stupid. So,
absolutely.
And I'm so glad that we're starting to see, both in Hawkeye and then in this film, they're starting to bring some of those characters in, because I've said before.
I guess I should have said spoilers for Hawkeye too for those that didn't see it. Good heavens!
I think you kind of know.
Well,
the internet has not
I've said before on the show that Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin is one of the greatest interpretations of any Marvel character on screen ever.
Yeah,
definitely.
Why would you not use him more?
And best of all, this also opens up for there's been rumors that we might get Jessica Jones and She-Hulk. I'd love to
So?
get Mike Coulter back as Luke Cage.
Yep.
Like all these things can happen. And best of all, give me a Shang-Chi 2 where we get a Iron Fist done right. And
Yes.
that would make
Yeah.
me super freaking happy.
Right.
I mean, redeeming Andrew Garfield is one thing.
Well,
Oh boy.
you know what? I have no problem with Iron Fist actor.
True.
Yeah.
True.
And
but there's
I
just so
feel
much further to
there's
go.
a whole lot further to go. But I think one of the, to my understanding, some of the Netflix stuff is still somewhat under the old purview of the old guy who ran Marvel. And some of some of his ideas and stuff. And this is why the showrunner who got Iron Fist, and that guy is just a show killer. He's the same guy that did Inhumans and a lot of other things. He's terrible, but he is a rich kid who does pay a lot of the producing fees.
Yep, exactly the case. Yes, and maybe it might be a good idea to give somebody more than like 3 days to learn kung fu. That may also be.
Yeah.
Would help.
Yeah.
Oh, season two was a
swinging
little
a
better.
sword in Westeros. It's basically the same.
Yeah.
In one fell swoop, in a less than 5-minute part, while it was a cameo, it still didn't feel like a cameo that was wasted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
And best of all, Shane, it felt Marvel.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very Marvel.
Because this is what happens in the comics all the time. Like does he need legal advice from Matt Murdock? Sure. 3 panels devoted to that. Move on with the story.
Yep. And nobody needs to know at this point that Matt Murdock's Daredevil, but everybody sure as hell at that point knew Spider-Man was Peter Parker.
Yeah.
I think at
And
that
So it
point,
makes perfect sense why Matt Murdock would have said, well, hey, let me help you out here.
yeah.
Sure.
I think
It's a
at that
down
point,
payment on. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I apologize.
I leaned over to Comfort and I said, "This is what I want out of a shared universe.
Yeah.
This is how you do it."
Mhm.
Yep.
Plus, it's a down payment to the audience that we know we're going to see Daredevil again in the future.
Yes.
Which is
Yes.
great.
And I think it just took them a minute to say, okay, how are these things? Can we fit them in? If so, how are we going to do that?
What's
Because
the
there was
audience
a bit of a
response?
stink like left on it after Defenders, which was fine.
Yeah.
But not everything it could have been, and definitely Iron Fist was a failure. So you're trying to say, how can we do this best? And you just are very careful about things and you take a step back.
I will say, if we don't get Matt Murdock and Jen Walters together,
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
I'm going
Yeah.
to be deeply disappointed.
And we're
Yeah.
definitely going to get him showing up in Echo. That has to happen because I mean, like,
Has to happen.
so much of Echo's,
Mhm.
entire existence is steeped in Matt Murdock lore. So yeah,
Yeah.
Sure.
it has to happen.
And yet allowing the cinematic Marvel universe, which encompasses all of the Disney Plus shows too, to evolve as much as it's out of order in our minds for comic book history, it still makes sense to allow these characters that have been in the Marvel universe for the movies for 10 years to start going away for a while, or in Tony Stark's case, going away forever, most likely,
Mhm.
yet bringing new characters in and allowing the universe to progressively roll
It's
forward. That makes
what
sense.
I always dreamed of for actual
comics.
Yeah.
100% the case.
And as much as I am, traditionally tried and true a DC guy, and I think a lot of their comics, especially through the 70s, 80s, and early 90s,
Mhm.
got it and did it well. It really shows just how poorly their movies are being thrown out. I enjoy a lot of their movies, and I enjoy a lot of aspects of the ones that aren't so great, but it's still not nearly as well done as it should
Right.
be for
Yeah.
being owned by Warner Brothers.
I agree for the most part. I mean, obviously Shazam was terrific, and
Mhm. Oh yeah,
Those
absolutely.
side projects. they
oh
do.
yeah, yeah, and that's just it. It's all about the side projects and what they've been able to succeed. Hell, even Aquaman, even though it was ridiculous, it was so
Oh.
much fun.
I
Yeah,
loved
yeah.
Aquaman.
Every bit
Yep.
as fun as it was dumb.
They let
think-
that Jason Momoa go, and for anybody who liked Aquaman but wants to also see other weird things that director did, go watch
Oh my God,
Malignant.
Malignant. We're
You
not
can
talking
thank
about
us
that
later.
tonight.
I think also, Shane, with DC, part of the problem is a lot of the key films were all being done by the same director.
Mhm. Oh
So
sure.
when you think about it, like one of the great things about the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that you have a variety of creators working on different properties, giving their own interpretation, which creates just a more interesting sort of tapestry. Whereas it was all Zack Snyder. It's one tone,
Yeah.
one dirge,
And
one
and you
one
know that
approach.
DC can do it because they took that approach with, say, 52, which was incredibly successful, but they came together for a single vision and then divvied it out to everybody responsible for their own stories.
Right.
But made it make sense, just like Marvel's doing with their movies. They're have an overlaying theme. They might come together and have a summit every now and then, but each creator's allowed to have their own vision. And it does tie into everything well enough, and it all makes sense.
And John Watts is now officially, I mean, mostly because Guardians 3 is taking forever to come out. He is the first person at MCU to direct a full trilogy. It's been John Watts this entire way. He's now going to move on to Fantastic Four after this.
Terrific!
Director signed on for that. But I think in that way, it was great to have the same artistic vision all the way through, because he had a basic idea of what he wanted Spider-Man to be, even though the writers were different on all three of these films, which does give it enough of a different personality. So
Guardians hasn't been filmed yet, right, Ian?
Guardians is I think Guardians might start filming like nowish, actually.
Okay.
Thor is filmed, Doctor Strange is filmed, Black Panther 2 is not filmed and may not be filmed, but
oh really?
Well,
yeah, it's a tough one.
They have to figure out whether or not they're going forward with Shuri or not, because the actress, there's some issues. And also she got injured on set, so there's that going with it. So they're delaying, waiting for her to.
Oh, so they had a script and they were filming it then.
They started filming it and then paused. Yeah, so we're gonna see how long that pause is actually going to take.
Yeah,
yeah, it may be a while. So we shall see. Before we move forward, by the way, we did actually get a couple of voicemails in on the voicemail line, so I'm just gonna play them back to back here. And we can get them out of the way. So stand by. Boy, let's see if we make the magic happen. There we are. Boom.
You know, a lot of people have been talking about Spider-Man lately. And I know him. I worked with him on the Avengers. It was a time, I recall, that we did not seem to have a great many battles. You know, when I think of Spider-Man, I don't really think about rushing into battle. There was a lot of sitting around the mansion and talking. You know, it was a time that seemed to have a great many meetings. And my memory, my impression of him is that he's a little bit like a little elf. You know, like a Santa elf that helps Santa. Because you never know where he's going to be, but he's always somewhere surprising. You know how sometimes it's a thing now, not when I was a boy, didn't have any of this bullshit, but when the mom, probably the mom, hides a little elf and the kids come home from school and they wake up in the morning and they have to find, well, where's the little elf going to be? Oh, he's up in the lamp. Oh, he's over here on the table. He was like that. You never knew in a meeting if he was going to ever sit in a chair. You know, he did a lot of crouching and squatting and hanging off things and stretching out. He's like a jogger. You know, those people who, I run, but, you know, those people who stretch out before they jog like they're about to do something very important for the world, and then they run around the neighborhood. But I mostly don't remember his face, his mask off. But now, and I say this remembering, and there was an HR lady at the Avengers they brought in to talk to me once, and I'm trying to remember. She told me that it is important to not talk about your coworkers' bodies or touch them or stare too much at them. So, and I understand, but I've got to say, most of what I remember about Spider-Man is that he's got no ass at all, that guy, you know? And that's most of what I saw, because you'd be at the meeting table and he'd just be crouched there on the table, and it was like he had two elbows back there, you know, and they were just pointing out at you in the middle of the. You'd be sitting on.
Oh, that's where it cut off. But wait, there's more. But wait, there's more.
Thank goodness.
There has to be more. There's actually two more. Here we go.
Oh, wow.
Your answer form seems to remind me that I do go on sometimes. I understand. Well, it's enough about Spider-Man's Tushy. Not really the one I like to think about. I've been breaking into the holiday gift baskets a little early. We had some bottles we were going to have a get together for New Year's. I'm not sure we're going to still be doing that. There's a lot of stuff going on here in Brooklyn, so I'm having a day where I open up the gift baskets, see what we got. I like the ones that have the bottle in them, partly because then there's all the little crinkly paper that is around the bottle. So the bottles really is the heart of the gift basket, and there might be some cheese or crackers or bullshit down there, but you get to kind of peel away with the little crinkly sound that goes with the bottle. And then if it's a nice look of champagne, I aim it at my shield and I pop it, and it makes a nice little sound, ding, off the shield, and I usually say Berlin or something like that, and I toast friends near and far. These are things that, you're all too young to do. Oh, they're Jeremy's friends. But, just things to remember for when you get older and you get those kinds of gifts, or give those kinds of gifts. I think it's important to know what kinds of gifts to give the people in your life to say your appreciation. I once got a basket. This might have been in July. I get a lot of things in July around the 4th. And it was fruit, but it was disguised as ugly flowers. And it fooled me. I mean, who knew there would be a thing like this? I don't know why. So I took them out. I put them in a vase with some water, and I thought, Peggy, Sharon, agent girlfriend, she'll like these. I'll just put them aside over here. I forgot about them, and 2 days later we were shitty with fruit flies. I don't know what that was all about. If you are strapped for money, I don't know what you make there with mowing lawns or shoveling out cars or whatever young man does for work these days. A handwritten note can be good too. Tell a teacher or parent or person in your life that you appreciate them. Make sure to wash your hands first, before you handle the stationery. And do be mindful of the stationery you use if you can get some. When I was
here we go. One more.
Oh my God.
Last time. Here we go.
And I don't mean to be ungrateful. I mean, when I was young, I was your age, getting an apple to yourself, that was a treat, But that was the Depression. That was a very different time. Give a man fruit looks like flowers. My last thing, I know a lot of people are talking about that I wanted to chime in on, if you wanted, is I know a lot of people have been talking about the, the mummyverse there. The thing where there's other yous in other places. It's like time travel sounds like this worse, and I understand Doc Strange, I guess, is in charge of all that. I don't like it. I really don't. I get enough nonsense going on in my own life without having to worry about what the other me's out there might be doing. They might show up. Who knows, my other villains from other places. I understand Spider-Man's villains like to get together in groups. It's no good. But I tell you, if mine did that, it would look like a Nazi Olympics combined with a snake circus. It'd be ridiculous. Send them one at a time. As far as other me's go, well, Doc Strange, if you'd like to send Captain America over who likes to clean up, there's some Earth cleanup, that's great. Come on over, clean up. Or maybe there's one that's from an Earth where they really like to listen to somebody else tell them about their day, and what happened at work, who might have undermined who else. That's fine. He can maybe be here for when Sharon Peggy comes home, and he can be the Captain America of Earth. Good listener. Could use him, but in general, forget about it. That Doc Strange, I don't know about him. I think he's a dope guy. He's a doctor. He probably writes prescriptions for it, but he seems like, the dope. It's no good, so he's a, goofbutz. Briefer. I don't think it's the serious stuff, but still. I did think maybe I could ask him, is there a shiny door to go see all the Spider-Women? Maybe they're all getting together somewhere. I wouldn't mind being a fly on that wall, you know what I mean? Well, happy holidays, boys. Merry Christmas. You be good to the people around you. Make sure to show your appreciation. Stay safe. Watch out for the moniverse.
Oh man.
You guys have Mr. Plinkett?
Drunk Cap, nothing.
Drunk Cap.
Yeah, nothing beats you. And I really hope that he at least got tickets to see Rogers the Musical. I hope that they give him some comp tickets for the front row and as much booze as he could possibly drink.
Right. Just set up a few flights for him and then just set up a mic in front of him and just let him air his thoughts. Well,
yes.
We delight in every moment.
Yeah, I'm going to sign off because my cold is getting so bad I'm going to start mouth breathing on the mic, and I want to subject our listeners to that. But
all right. Well, glad you at least got to be around for the Cap portion. So
Yeah.
I was looking forward to it. 5 frickin' swears, by the way, of course, for this film.
Obviously. Good for sticking with us, Chris, and feel better. And we'll talk in 2022.
You bet. Happy holidays to all.
Happy
holidays.
Bye-bye.
Chris.
Bye.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks. Merry Christmas.
All right. Speaking of Captain America, we have to bring up the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
and what they decided to do to the Statue of Liberty in this
And
reality.
then what was undone.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do we actually think that would ever happen?
No.
No.
Seems unlikely, but
Well,
No.
didn't they re-gold the Statue of Liberty back in the 70s? Like
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with being golden, bronzed, whatever.
It's just
And
standard
even
upkeep.
on what was the show that they actually had the alternate universe that still had that?
Fringe.
Fringe,
yes.
which was fabulous as time went on.
Yes.
So I that part I'm okay with. The shield, not so much.
Well, I would say we didn't all go through the blip, so you can't say
That's
for
true.
real.
You need to reserve judgment. I'd hardly agree.
True.
When,
That is
when
fair.
somebody in our world fights back a giant alien raisin monster to save half of all living beings in existence,
Correct.
we may put their t-shirt
Maybe.
on the Statue of Liberty and it may feel appropriate.
Maybe.
It's a possibility.
We'll go with that.
We can't rule it out.
Exactly.
Just saying, we can't rule it out.
But it got fixed.
I just love that it's the same year that they make a musical out of Cap that they also
He's
decide.
clearly big.
Oh, he's
Very big.
but
Yeah.
everybody's always big after they die. You know, the records go up in price. Like, the signed autographs go up in price. So everyone's probably talking about him right now because they all think he died.
Well,
he-
sure, but it's like when they put the the little round sunglasses on the Statue of Liberty after Lenin died.
Mhm.
That didn't last either. It made sense at the time. But It didn't stick around. I like to imagine that there's some gigantic hangar somewhere where they just store all of like the accessories for the Statue of Liberty to just bring them out and swap them up and down every now and then.
And for summer, it has a nice lay over it with a margarita that they can put in its hand instead of the torch. Like
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All these different varieties.
Sure.
Yeah.
But man, did they destroy that quick.
Yeah.
That's why you shouldn't have your superhero battles on a landmark, especially one that's in the process of being retrofitted. So that's we learned a valuable lesson.
Unless you're going to have a superhero fight on the Sphinx in the past, and you're the reason it loses its nose. That's the one exception.
Not cliche.
Yes, that is completely the case.
I've got to remind you, Mr. Withers, that we do have Die Hard to watch tonight.
Yes. Yippee-ki-yay.
In the background, if we can see, that's Lynn back there.
Oh, nice.
And she's one of our Team Comfort and Adam people, and a former intern, and we promised her Die Hard this evening.
Excellent. All right. Well,
first, I think we should go through favorite scenes.
Yes.
Oh, all right. Then let's do that.
Absolutely.
And far and away, without question, and probably my favorite scene of anything all year, Garfield saves MJ. It's telegraphed, but like until the moment you don't see it coming. And then when you see it coming, it's the most obvious thing ever. And it does not matter even a small bit because of everything that Andrew Garfield went through in the brief time he was in this movie. You are so on his side. You so desperately want him to catch a break and for something to go well. And they had the foresight not to just have the moment, but to linger on the aftermath of the moment. So it's not just that he saves her, it's that he lands and he is so overcome with emotion himself before he can shake it off and get back into it. This is why I keep using the term catharsis for this movie, because that's what he's going through. Like he's having this moment and suddenly this weight is lifted off of him and he is different for the rest of the film. Getting that chance. There were a number of periods in the movie where I got very emotional, got very choked up, but that just broke me. I was my God. The slow motion, as soon as he starts running, I'm just like, I almost lost it completely.
Well, and
was
even
not prepared.
Even at the first inkling of the possibility that we would get these, that's what I was hoping would happen with his character. It just made the most sense for me to resolve his story.
Definitely.
I did not dare to dream that such a thing could be possible.
Yeah.
Because so often when they do these kinds of movies, it's just fan service. Like you get so used to seeing cheap, lazy fan service that you forget that it can be done well, that it can actually serve a function, that it can actually tell a story, that it can be heartfelt and meaningful and impactful, and also be a huge fan service pop for the audience.
Definitely the case. And I mean, for that matter, related to that, before I get to my favorite scene, now I have even further questions as to what universe Morbius is going to be taking place in. And for that matter, I think some of it's red herrings. I think that some of the Spider-Man references that were placed into the trailer may not necessarily be in the film. I think because they're firmly placing it in the Venomverse, and Venom's universe doesn't have a Spider-Man. We've made that perfectly clear, or if there is one, we haven't met him yet.
Right. Exactly.
So having that reference to that, having Michael Keaton, all that, you got to go one way or the other. Either it's MCU or it's Venomverse. You can't go both. So I'm very curious as to where we wind up with that when it actually does get released. My favorite scene, I think I'm gonna go with the Mirrorverse. How well that was executed. Not only is it incredibly Doctor Strange, but the way Peter got out of it, the way that he used math to his advantage, and grabbed the spinner off of Doctor Strange's finger, and kept him in there. I think that was incredibly well done, and the best special effects that we saw since the Mysterio stuff in Far From Home. I'd say
Great Peter moment. Great Peter moment.
Excellent Peter moment, and so Peter and so Spider-Man all at the same time. So yeah, I absolutely adored that scene.
Yeah.
Shane?
Mine's the rooftop of the school after May passed away, and you had Ned and Michelle comforting Peter, and then you had the other two Peters come and start to weigh in and really start to talk about the weight of what was happening. But especially that first few minutes where Ned and Michelle just found him and was there for him through everything that happened, and comforted him to what has to happen next to get him to the next part.
Definitely.
Just heart-wrenching moment where they just all bawled. That was the first time I teared up in the movie.
Yeah.
We've talked so much about all of the crossover stuff and the fan service stuff that it hasn't come up that I think this is the best material for Ned and MJ that they've had in the franchise. So
absolutely.
They really got to shine. And that also was part of what made the fan service aspects so much more tolerable, so much better executed, is that it never forgot that this was Tom Holland's movie. It never forgot what the point of it was. And it really centered those characters at the middle of this as an anchor for everything else that was going on.
Certainly. Yeah. Yep. Murd, what do you fall on?
Well, I think I land on the scene with Peter and friends interrogating the various spider villains in their little science cells in Doctor Strange's basement. It's just all the as they play off of each other. Like one villain will say something, another villain will chime in, then it bounces back to the hero. It just those villain characters and their personalities, for characters they are and personalities they have, as we've stressed several times here. It's both indicative of their personalities as characters, and also it kind of recites the continuity of the film series, which is good for fans as well. And just I just like it when villains
also catches the audience up too. Very good.
Yes. So it's good exposition, and it's also good characterization, and it's also just romping good comic booky fun. I like anything that gives villains a little more development and just strikes sparks off of their individual personalities and shows the chemistry between them. And I'm just all set for that Sinister Six movie that we've heard rumored here and there.
Yeah.
Did you notice?
I could have just listened to those villains riffing off each other and making plans together in the absence of any Spider-Man from any universe. I could have watched a whole movie of just that.
Yep.
And that scene has got me kind of jonesing for it, in fact.
Did you notice that Doc Ock and Goblin referred to each other only by their last names until Dr. Octopus is cured?
Right.
And when he comes down, then it's Otto and Norman.
Yes. Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah. And the silhouettes of other Sinister Six members that we did not see in the sky as the skies are ripping apart. Craven is certainly obvious, and I saw a very clear Rhino and a even further comic book Electro as a silhouette in there as well.
Thought I made out the Scorpion. It could have been.
Scorpion was definitely a part of it too. Yeah.
Jimmy Kimmel a while ago did a little comedy sketch where he, spoiled the fact that he was going to be making an appearance as Craven, and it was just emotional clips from the movie with occasionally him stuck in there saying, now we go to hunt the spider, yes."
Man, when we get to the point of like a last hunt, it's gonna be fantastic. Before you guys exit out,
I actually have a favorite thing.
Oh yeah, no, please come, go right ahead.
We are two people.
So, I know. It's weird sometimes. So my favorite thing is not necessarily a scene, but a concept. And the concept is of healing and redemption, which means a few things. First, what we've talked about here, but also it is a thing that I think says, hopefully, that the movies can actually have conclusions for characters, and they can let them go. which is something that comics never could. And then also, I think it's important because as something like that happens and we start to change our minds about certain systems in our world, when you have something like the Marvel movies doing this thing, saying that bad guys can be redeemed, not just dying by their own hand like they always do, that may not seem super important, but to young people who watch it, that can change their ideas on a lot of things moving forward. And so I think it's a brave and, if I may say, bold move to take that they would do that even when it might not be as socially expedient for some of their viewers and for the thing they're trying to do, which is create people who have heroes and villains and who fight. This is a more nuanced point of view, and that's incredibly commendable.
100% the case. And honestly, I couldn't have put it better myself, Comp. That's one of the best parts of this movie. And the best part of building characters is accepting the fact that your characters are allowed to grow and are allowed to continue past that growth. Because if this is indeed, John Watts' final, turn at crafting a Spider-Man tale, now he's perfectly set it up for whoever comes next. And I certainly hope that we do get that trilogy of movies that they're hinting that we might very well get with with Tom Holland still in the role. But honestly, even if it's just one, then let's see where we go from here.
I'm excited.
So, it's been a good time. And as two people who write a superhero story that is expressly about growth and change, because when we were reading comics, it becomes obvious that that's not something that can happen. It's been very heartening to see that, at least for now, that's what they've been doing in the movies.
Well, and that there's a hunger.
There's a hunger for
the people amongst the audience, to see those kinds of stories told as well.
Absolutely the case. How many freaking swears would you give it out of 5? What do you give it?
Oh, it's 5 out of 5.
It's a 5.
5 out of 5.
Yeah, 5.
I don't know if I'd say it's the best Marvel film, but it is.
It's right up there. It's easily in the top 5 to 3.
Yeah,
terrific. We're gonna touch on a few other couple things before we wrap up. But Comfort and Adam, thank you guys so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for having you. It's so
Thanks
great
for coming
to be with you guys again.
Yes.
Yep, definitely. Let the folks know where they can find you and where they can find your stuff.
Well, if you want to read our take on superheroes, you can go to Webtoon and look up The Uniques.
The Uniques.
Right. And if you want to find us on the social medias or anywhere else, we're always at Comfort and Adam.
Indeed.
Anywhere you want to go.
All right, terrific. And yippee-ki-yay. Enjoy the rest of your night.
We shall. Thank
Happy
you so
holidays,
much.
Take care.
Christmas, you guys.
Yes,
Christmas.
a pleasure. We'll come back
holidays,
and
our
talk
friends.
about Webtoon someday.
Most definitely. It's on the docket.
We're only going to talk to you guys when it involves webs.
Good.
Sometime.
Keep that theme.
Thematic.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
Have a good night, guys.
Night, night.
Bye.
Night.
Bye.
All right. So before we wrap up, I've got a couple of trivia tidbits, thanks to the wonders at IMDb. Obviously, some of these could be false, but most of them seem true to me, which is why I'm going to bring them up. Number one, and this is something that I noticed, especially on the second time that I watched it, which I forgot to mention. I've seen it twice. The first time that I saw it was opening night, that Thursday night. It was a packed house at the AMC that I was at. I was in the very last row off to the right side, so there really weren't that many people around me. With this one, I just actually got to go to the Alamo Draft House in Lower Manhattan, and I was in the second to last row, and there was nobody next to me for 3 seats. It was absolutely glorious, and I could sit down and eat. And I wish I had it close to me, because I did get the special menu that they were giving, which was actually also on a Spider-Man mask. I had the green gobbler pizza that they had created. It was like a Hatch green chili chicken pizza with a bunch of other accoutrements on it and sour cream, and it was super delicious and super yummy. And that was my my breakfast / lunch this morning. It was delightful.
I choose to believe that Green Gobbler is a reference to the character of the same name from the early 80s animated special Thanksgiving in the Land of Oz. Which is an actual thing. You can look it up.
Well, I you know what? We're just gonna go with yes. That's 100% what they were looking for, Murd. There's
Norman
no
who?
doubt. Exactly. They also had a pumpkin bomb shake. I didn't actually try it.
Oh, that
Also
sounds
nice.
good.
Oh yeah, yep. Pumpkin spice vanilla shake from the looks of it. But Norman Osborn, going along with that, he wore his prosthetic teeth, Willem Dafoe, and he had the prosthetics in for Norman, and then his real teeth would show for Green Goblin.
Oh, get out.
Oh, brilliant.
Yep,
I didn't know that.
the exact same way that he did it in the Raimi ones, and he only agreed to reprise this role if they let him do the bulk of his own stunts.
I've heard that multiple times.
Yeah,
Wow.
he's in his 70s.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
70s or is he 66?
Is he 66?
I thought I saw he was 66.
You might be right on that one.
But still,
yeah,
Well, there's a lot of disinformation swirling around Hollywood as to the actual ages of various
Well,
performers.
that's
true.
fair. He is
That's
66.
true.
You are correct. Yes, he's 6. But nevertheless, that's pretty damn
Yeah.
close to 70, and that he's able to still pull that off is a real feat.
Yep.
I showed the image multiple times of Doctor Strange in his sanctum, with the blizzard and what have you. I love that he has a "Oh for Fox's sake" mug
Yeah.
that he's holding throughout those scenes.
Yep.
That was a nice little tidbit to throw in there, and I wonder if it was also a subtle dig at Fox. That could possibly be the case.
How about also that we got to see what's in Doctor Strange's refrigerator,
Yes.
which came up in the more recent comics, maybe not the most recent, but one of the more recent iterations of Doctor Strange comics.
Yes, we saw it, and it also saw us.
Yes,
Yes.
it did.
They were saying too that one of the apprentices that we saw that was sweeping up may very well be one of the apprentices from Jason Aaron's run on Doctor Strange. That was
Okay.
and we may very well be seeing them again in Sam Raimi's upcoming Doctor Strange movie. So we'll keep an eye out for that. As previously said, it was John Watts, the first one to make a trilogy out of it. But one of my favorites here, bringing up Nicholas Hammond, who played Peter Parker / Spider-Man in the series Amazing Spider-Man, was considered for a tongue-in-cheek cameo role, but the part was cut at the script stage due to concerns about the length of the film.
I guess that's legit.
Yeah, I guess.
We could just go on for a whole episode about different things they could have done.
Exactly.
sure.
I think, as Adam and Comfort pointed out, it's enriching this discussion as they do everything that they touch. That would have been maybe a bridge too far, and the fact that they kept it as stuffed and yet as streamlined as they did, they found the right balance there. So
Yeah, I think so too.
I would have liked to see like live action versions of Firestar and Iceman pop out at some point.
Oh my God, that would have been.
Oh God, yeah, boy, would that have been a dream?
Well, I remember there was going to be a New Mutants TV series at one point. Sorry, New Warriors TV series at one point. That was in the planning stages, and they almost filmed the pilot even, and it just never
Squirrel
went.
Girl was going to be in it.
Yep.
Yep, they cast everybody and then just decided not to do it.
I thought there was something with Squirrel Girl at Screen Test or something I saw recently.
You may have. It's a possibility. Yeah, but let's focus. Since Comfort and Adam did mention Ned, I wanted to bring up the fact that Ned is indeed magical.
Yeah.
And does this mean that we're going to see more of Ned, leading into that, whether it be in Doctor Strange or in the next, theoretical Spider-Man movie? Like, is this the last we see of Magic Ned?
I'd like to think he's going to show up in Doctor Strange without any of the other Spider-Man cast, which would be an interesting turn for his character. But then he'd have to remember everything that happened, and I'm not sure that he does now.
Yes,
Right.
if Peter / Spider-Man is no longer in his life, what's his connection to Doctor Strange? How will they get back together?
That's a good point. Yeah.
I still think that there's a possibility somebody somewhere remembers him for whatever reason.
And I think we're going to get there definitely with this, with this upcoming change. Oh, and that was something else that makes this better than One More Day. The fact that they didn't rewrite, the death of May, because that was one of the key points of One More Day in the comic book, is that, he's making this sacrifice in order to save his aunt's life. That would have retracted so much of of what made this movie matter if somehow May had come out of this alive. And I'm very glad that they decided not to do that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, for everything, for all intents and purposes, I should say, May is this Peter's Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
I mean, I never expected that to be a thing, and yet it makes so much more sense. As soon as she got hit by Goblin, I
Mhm.
thought, oh no,
Yeah.
they can't. And then she got up. I'm like, well, all right, maybe no, something's wrong. Oh no. And then that was it. Yeah.
And that if there is a Ben in this universe, she's not buried next to him.
No.
They made that very clear, that there was just her gravestone. So maybe
some part of me kind of expected that one of the screenwriters of one of these movies somewhere was going to reintroduce a very much alive Uncle Ben who was kind of a louse and had walked out on May and Peter years earlier, and he'd be played by Steve Buscemi or something. And that would have really rankled me. I mean,
yeah.
You can take your
terrible
spider reverence only so far.
Yeah.
Let's just say that he was buried next to the Parkers, and that's why he wasn't buried next to May. Like that's a possibility.
Maybe she's in the Riley plot somewhere.
That's a possibility as well.
Well, and it for this universe's Spider-Man, it makes perfect sense that it's very possible that Uncle Ben, if there was one, just passed away of natural causes, something else.
Awesome.
And that's everything that she was going through when Peter mentioned that in I guess Homecoming. And I'm okay with that, especially with how things turned out. It's surprisingly comforting to have so many differences amongst the Spider-Men of the movies, and yet still all kind of make sense.
Yeah.
And pull at similar threads that again end them up at the same place anyway.
Yeah, no, it's very true, and it doesn't take away from the mythos of Spider-Man in this at all. I feel, which I was worried about, because not having an Uncle Ben as a key character, it could have easily detracted, but in the end, I really don't think it really
no, and questioning why Tony was put in that place in the beginning, but again, it all worked out in the end.
Yep. This is the first MCU film to have a fight taking place in the Bronx. So I want to make that perfectly clear. When Peter saves the MIT person on the highway, that's the Cross Bronx. So it's heading away from the GW. So I have no idea what airport she's heading to, but whatever. But bridges be bridges. But she you can see the one of the oldest bridges in New York, to the right of them, where a scene in Luke Cage took place, as well. Getting the name of the bridge now, real quick, but basically it was a bridge that's only for crossing via foot, and it's one of the oldest bridges in New York City. That would be the High Bridge. And again, there was a scene in Luke Cage, I believe season 2, that took place on that High Bridge. So it's nice to see it again in one way or another in MCU lore. So cool stuff to be brought up. Finally, Flash Thompson's book is called Flashpoint.
I know. I thought of that as soon as he said it. I thought, oh boy, there's a dig for your Warner Brothers.
Because, hey, Marvel beat them to the punch on the 2 Batman thing that's going to be going on in the Flash movie. And that's pretty much a Flashpoint movie that's just been renamed to The Flash. So I don't think that was a coincidence in the end. Let's talk about the last two scenes of the film because we didn't really touch on that too much.
Oh, the post-credit scenes.
Yes, indeed. Yep. The mid-credits scene and then the end credits trailer. Which
Yeah,
is really what it was.
Just
calling us
right
spade
off
a spade here.
Exactly.
right off the top of my head, I was disappointed hearing it's 2 extra credit scenes and then having it be a trailer. If it's a trailer, make it a trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it, but it was a trailer.
It definitely was. Yeah. It's a trailer that made sense.
Oh yeah, totally made sense.
Considering, Doctor Strange being such a pivotal role to this and
Yeah.
the multiverse angle sort of,
Sure.
leading so forward into what's going to be happening next.
Yeah.
But yes, I agree with you. It could have been 2 scenes and a trailer, but instead,
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But let's talk about that mid-credit scene. So hey, they followed up on the Venom stuff.
I'm a little disappointed. Not again, I didn't see the second Venom. I didn't even see the first Venom, but I know you all talked about the extra credit scene from the second Venom to begin with.
Yeah.
I was a little disappointed that it was just so little in this movie. I expected it to be a little bit more of at some point, but I guess it makes sense that now there's Venom in this universe, or going to be.
Yep, and it might seek out the MCU's version of Eddie Brock, or it might bond with somebody entirely unrelated.
Was there anybody? Was Flash Venom at one point?
Flash was Venom at one point. Yes,
it's kind of a heroic version of Venom. He was, I guess, like a Black Ops agent.
Okay.
To bring up Jason Aaron again, I'm pretty sure he was the one who actually wrote a decent amount of that series.
Okay, I couldn't quite remember.
Yeah,
brought in a new version of the Jack-O-Lantern character to be like the arch nemesis, as I recall.
Okay.
Yep, and in that as well, it was after Flash came back from the war. He had lost both of his legs. And that was the compromise. Like, you'll be able to walk again, but you're gonna have to be Agent Venom when you do so. And for the most part, he was under control, but then every now and then he would venom out and start attacking people and what have you.
Now, as much as I've said in the past, both with Spider-Man 3 and the Venom movies, that you can't really have Venom without Spider-Man, I really don't want to see this symbiote bond with Peter.
I agree with
now to me, go with another direction. Just have it become a Venom, not a black suit Spidey and then a Venom.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how this Tom Holland Spider-Man would actually work with a black suit Venom. Like, I think, and mind you, we've already gotten a black suit costume even. Like in this movie, we got.
Yeah, you're right.
Yep.
Right.
We've had him with a suit that talks to him.
That's also true. Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, I think we can easily go Venom without the angle of that this time around. But who's going to wind up taking on the suit? We don't know. But I guarantee you, it happened this way because Marvel wouldn't let them put their Sony Venom that much into this movie. And it would have taken away from it. Had he been the sixth of the Sinister Six, there would have been too much slapstick, and it wouldn't have worked.
I thought maybe they'd throw in Michael Keaton's Vulture.
I thought so too.
Yeah,
that and Scorpion I thought would have shown up.
Yeah, no, both of those are possibilities. I mean, hell, they could have even had Rhino if they really wanted to. But that was over the top ridiculous in Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Because now even Vulture wouldn't remember who Peter is. Like the ramifications of the spell really go beyond anything just initially thought of when you see the movie. You have to start thinking about. Well, now Vulture's not it. Like there's so many people now that don't know.
Yeah.
It other than just a clean slate, it's more than that now for an open book to do whatever they want to next without worrying about what they did in the past, because it doesn't matter now.
That's true. Yeah. I think, and that's the problem with a spell like this, is that it does, rewrite previous movies in the process.
Yeah.
Doesn't take away Vulture as a character.
No. And I loved Michael Keaton as it.
Oh, sure. It's just, what the heck are we getting in Morbius? That's what I'm wondering about. Like, is this Venom's reality's version of Michael Keaton Vulture? Is this our Vulture? I don't freaking know anymore.
Yeah.
It's going to be really interesting to see where that goes. but we'll know soon enough, one way or the other. Yep. What about with the end trailer? And now we get Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, our first peek at what that's going to be like. I really dug it.
I like how he needs help and he goes to Wanda, and Wanda's first reaction is, I know I did wrong. And he's like, no, I'm not here for that. I need help, because even he can't figure it out and needs somebody who potentially could be way more powerful than even he is.
Yeah. Yep. And we all watched What If all the way through, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sure did.
I was not expecting the reveal at the end there of what it very much appears to be Dark Doctor Strange from What If.
Yep.
Showing up here in the flesh, in reality. Did not see that coming at all.
Yeah. Ben, my son Ben called that first. I was just not thinking of it quite in that way right away. I was just enjoying the trailer, and then he said, how about that What If tie-in? I'm like, wait, what? Oh my God, you're right. And then
honestly, I didn't make that connection either. It to me just looked like another generic, Earth 3 / mirror evil version of Doctor Strange, and it's kind of ho-hum. And frankly, even now that it's been pointed out to me that this might be the same variant Doctor Strange from What If, my reaction is still kind of ho-hum.
I think it depends on what they do with it.
Yeah.
And what it means.
They'll have to do a lot more than what they teased us with in this little trailer.
Sure.
I'm sure they'll tease us still further as the actual release date draws nigh.
Yeah.
Yep. Happy to see full confirmation of America Chavez in continuity for MCU, and more Wanda. That makes me happy.
Yeah.
I was hoping to see a glimpse of Man-Thing, perhaps, since he is the guardian of the nexus of all realities.
Ooh, okay. All right. We could go there. I could see that possibly happen.
As soon as possible for me. I'm just going to sip right in it here. I love me some Man-Thing.
Some giant-sized Man-Thing. That's what I'm talking about. But also, if they get cheeky with it and we wind up getting Deadpool at some point flipping through the multiverse like I really want to happen, that would make the most sense in this one. I thought it was going to happen in Spider-Man and it didn't happen, but we're apparently getting another Deadpool movie, and this is the way it's going to make sense to have him suddenly be in the MCU. So all through a hole, Wade, you could certainly do that.
Sure.
We shall see. Anything of note that we didn't bring up that we should be bringing up?
How about Matt's thoughts?
Yes, a very, very good point. Yes, Matt was originally going to join us here for this episode, but he unfortunately had work obligations. So I will bring up the email that he sent us right now. He said, it's easily the best Holland Spidey movie. This was the first time, maybe in Civil War, that this version actually felt like Spider-Man. Several plot holes, but by the third act, they didn't seem to matter. Although Garfield never interested me, I still haven't watched Amazing Spider-Man 2. I thought the moment and reaction when he saved Michelle felt earned. Also, we forgot to bring up that they finally dropped the Watson part on us. That she's Michelle Jones Watson, so she actually is MJ Watson. That's pretty cool. I like that they didn't DH Toby. I agree with that as well. I thought including him added the weight of moments that the poor Holland movie lacked, and his trying to do better response to Ock asking how he was seems spot on. Totally agree with that. You like seeing the three Parkers be scientists. Those were some of my favorite scenes of the entire movie. And Peter commenting on how math was better than magic in the mirror dimension. There we are with that. 100% agree. I also thought it was on brand that they would try to help the villains as opposed to defeat them. In the movie versions, I think they were all tragic villains, except for Osborn. And I could even see Norman Osborn as a tragic villain.
Definitely.
Yeah, certainly with the losing his mind and having to deal with the fact that this other version of himself is running around causing all these tragedies while he has no control over that himself. That certainly seems to be a pretty tragic way of looking at it. Hats off to whoever thought of calling Flash's book Flashpoint. So he agrees with that. Nice little needling for the forthcoming DCEU movie that looks to have similar elements. Yes, this is a very important question here. Did anyone else hear the complaint of Aunt May getting fridged? Wouldn't that, by extension, mean Uncle Ben was fridged? And I don't really see it as a fridging, frankly. For those of you unfamiliar with the term, when a character is fridged, that means it goes back to Kyle Rayner finding out that his girlfriend was in the fridge, and that was supposed to enhance him as a character. And I don't really see that here. I think that this is the tragedy, though, that Spider-Man always
is built on.
Exactly. Yeah. Always has to deal with, and always was built on. And it wasn't like it was sudden and out of nowhere. It made sense within the movie. And I think while it does build him as a character, it doesn't feel out of phase with what's happening, if that makes any sense. Like it feels like it completely makes sense in the overall scope of Spider-Man and of the MCU Spider-Man that this were to occur.
Yeah.
All right. Two key things that I think disqualify this as a fridging. I mean, number one, the death was not entirely gratuitous. Well, I think the movie kind of cheekily meta-responded to or anticipated this kind of criticism when in a conversation between the three Peters, I think it was Maguire that said to Holland, then she didn't die for nothing. Because she conveyed that important message that it has to be a part of every Spider-Man origin, and however many movies it takes to tell it, right? Every time it happens, and two, the fact she was not a completely helpless victim. She had the chance to run away. She stuck around, and the reason she was there in harm's way was because she stayed there on site to try and do something to take down the Goblin and save Peter. She was the one who stuck that cure chemical, that magic bullet to kill the Goblin, into Osborn, and it didn't work, of course, and that's what ended up with those are the two most important criteria, I think, as far as this not being a fridge.
Not only to protect Peter, but also to continue to show him how he should act, to reinforce that you have a responsibility to try and help portion. You don't just run away. You can't force people to run away. They're going to stick around to help you, and you should help them, kind of thing is how I also kind of took it.
Good point. Yeah. He also says, I like that this movie is open-ended regarding where the character could go next. The MCU, the Sonyverse, both, and all of the ideas thrown out there for the next one versus Venom, Ned as Hobgoblin, Ned as a sorcerer, and introducing live-action Miles as Spider-Man, all suck. And nothing from that has ever been said. Exactly.
Yeah. I would be okay with Miles Morales showing up at some point in the future. I think it's a natural progression in the way these movies are being made.
Yeah, I don't think it should be the next movie. I think, maybe they could introduce Miles, but not have him be Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That's
another passing thought I had. Do you think this movie would have been made or as successful if Into the Spider-Verse wasn't so successful? Because we got a lot of multi-spider people, and it was incredibly successful for many reasons that I didn't expect it to be. And then this started to come about. Well, it's kind of similar in some ways, completely different ways it was done, but it is Spider-Verse stuff happening. Just a random thought that went through my head the other day.
I think it still would have happened. I think the fact that Into the Spider-Verse was made, and that it kind of put multiple Spider-Men and multiple takes on Spider-Man in a single movie in people's minds may have caused the filmmakers to tread a little more cautiously to make their film, tonally distinct. That I think it still would have happened, and I think it If anything, I think it would have been even more successful than it already is, because there wouldn't have been so many people, drawing parallels, fair or unfair, between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I agree with that as well. I think that this movie is a lot more about the relationship between Sony and Marvel than Into the Spider-Verse was, because with that, it's an animated. It can do whatever it wants. It's off on the side. It's its own universe, its own lore, its own personality. They can be cheeky about what came before. It's some of the jokes about like the Christmas album and what have you. But that stands on its own. This is live action Spidey, and I think that after the last renegotiation, because remember, at one point this third movie was not going to happen.
Yep.
They had only signed a deal for a certain amount of films, and Tom Holland basically helped this happen. He's the one who went into Sony's office and basically was like, we got to finish this. We can't leave people hanging here. And I'm sure it wasn't just him. I'm sure it was also the executives and everybody else, making the decisions, but that certainly helped.
Yeah.
And I think that when that agreement was made, that essentially cemented that we need to conclude on a high note here in case this is our last movie. And at the same time, let's also acknowledge the past. Let's acknowledge where we came and where we are now, and give fans of previous Sony movies a little bit of a thank you for sticking with Spider-Man as long as you have. So I think that's more where we are here. I don't think necessarily, it may have contributed in one way or another, this story itself, but I think this story very much stands on its own and separate from Spider-Verse, more so than I ever thought it would, mind you.
I'm just thinking that they were toying with the idea, and then that became so successful. Like, yeah, you know what? It really could work if we do it right.
Oh, it certainly helped. Well, I mean, yeah, and I would make that statement. It certainly helped, as Murd said, put the idea into people's heads that, hey, this could be a thing that works. But also, it stands on its own. It's plain and simple.
Yeah. Did either of you, for a long time, expect Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire?
Yeah.
Or is that just a hopeful dream?
The minute that they announced that the multiverse was going to be involved, like the minute that they announced the multiverse was going to be involved, before we even knew who the villains were going to be, I'm like, oh my God, they're doing it. And not once did I believe Andrew Garfield when he said, no, I'm not in the movie. I'm like, shut up. I know you're in the movie.
Well, you know what? I won't say that I never thought it possible, but I did, as time kept going on and they both kept denying it when they talk, I thought, well, maybe they're really not.
Yeah.
That would suck, but maybe it just didn't work for some reason.
The only other way that I could have seen this movie go, and it's only because of the Spider-Man 3 suit that Peter Parker is wearing when he's when he's on that bridge in the Bronx. He's basically wearing, Tobey's suit from Spider-Man 3. It's a nice reference to that. And of course, Spider Dance for life. But I thought for a minute, is Tom jumping universes? Is he inhabiting the bodies of the other Spider-Men?
Okay, quantum spider leap, huh?
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
That's the only other direction I could have seen this movie go, is if he was leaping from universe to universe, and then eventually we would separate them and we'd actually see Andrew and Tobey, or we only see them when he looks in his own reflection, full quantum leap, or maybe like inside of his own mind or what have you. I don't know, but I'm glad they didn't go that route. I'm glad we got the
no, I am too. And I do think that even though we all suspected it, they kept it secret without anything leaking out.
But I'll tell you, but when the leaks happened, they were real leaks. And,
yeah.
And this movie 100% confirmed that, because we saw the exact shot, that Andrew Garfield shot that circulated of him, leaning up against the scaffolding and what have you. We saw that exact shot in this movie. So anybody who was doubting the validity of that for the lead up to it, It was there. It happened.
Well, even an early trailer that sort of leaked without getting fixed when Lizard's head gets knocked over, like, but there's nothing there. You're thinking, well, there's got to be something there. And then from every commercial forward, they fixed that and cut it just before he got whacked.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then you actually saw the whack in the movie because
and I'm like, oh, there it is.
I looked for that whack on the second time that I watched the movie. I missed it the first time, and then I saw it on the second, and I'm like, Portuguese trailer.
Yep.
The Phantom Fist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, overall though, so happy with this, and
me too.
I couldn't have asked for more. It's a 5 frickin' swears for me.
Yeah, me too.
Rhetorically, I ask this because I'm pretty sure the answer is going to be yes. But have you ever gone to see a movie in the theater, and even as you're watching it, before you've even completed your first watch through, you're thinking to yourself, I will watch this movie many more times, and I can't wait for the next one.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This was that kind of movie. This is going to be eminently rewatchable. I mean, the surprises aren't going to have quite the same force, but it's going to be no less enjoyable because it's not just about the shock value. It's not just about the superficial fan wink kind of stuff, as Adam and Comfort were saying. It's there is substance to the meta crossovers and all of that stuff. These are characters, and watching them interact, that is the real joy, not just the, oh my gosh, it's that guy from that thing factor.
Yeah, no, it's the way that they had energy between them. It's the way they all came together and just made this movie better.
And they avoided, member berries. One of my favorite things to bring up from South Park, and one of my
Dr. Octopus, yeah, I remember.
Mostly because of the way they introduced the characters and how integral they were to the story. Andrew and Toby showing up when they did made absolutely perfect sense. Had it happened at a different point, maybe not so much.
And it also gave me something I really never thought I'd want to see, which is either one or both, but certainly another Andrew Garfield movie with a much older Spider-Man doing something to show an adult Spider-Man in the world.
Yeah.
It's something that you see in the comics now and then of course they reset sometimes, but now you might get a beyond college year Peter Parker and Spider-Man doing something in the world.
Well, maybe eventually they'll do a second season of What If Into the Spider-Verse, where it'll just be different visions of different Spider-Man realities, and maybe that could be the vehicle for what you're describing, Shane.
Yeah,
possible. Yeah, and also that we actually got Toby talking about his relationship with MJ the way that we did, is there anyone in your life? And obviously Andrew Garfield says no, because he's the more, mopey, sad Spider in this situation, which again,
Gwen was the only one for him, his first, his last, his only.
Exactly. And they could have very easily had on the cutting room floor Toby being like, oh, hey, Gwen. Yeah, I met a Gwen once. Anyway.
Actually in Spider-Man 3, I was thinking about that.
Exactly. But, him mentioning that MJ and him, it's complicated, but they worked it out. And that was enough for me. That's enough for me to know that, there's a happy Tobey Maguire Spider-Man out there.
The only thing I would have liked, and this is very fan service selfish of me, instead of just the trailer at the end, what you see as at least Tobey Maguire goes back and gives
Kirsten
MJ
Dunst.
a hug, and it's Kirsten Dunst, but that's total fan service on my part.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, I'm also glad we didn't get a Force Ghost Gwen Stacy, because that would have been
no, that would have been weird.
Exactly.
No, but I like it's been said before. I love the when he gets to the ground with this universe's MJ, you all right? And he's welling up, and she goes, yeah, are you all right? And he's really okay. It's something that he could do to help himself now, as well as this universe's MJ.
Yep. Oh, and Flash Thompson had blonde hair by the end. That also made me happy.
Yeah.
Murd, did we get your rating, by the way?
You didn't actually. It's very close to perfect. I mean, I don't give out 5 frickin' sweeters like Christmas turkeys. And for most of this movie, I was sitting there just giggling with glee, and actually thinking to myself, "Oh, this is so getting a 5." And then they did the whole one more day thing, and I'm sorry, that it's just a poor device. And as has been remarked on all sides here, it does raise an awful lot of niggling questions, like how does Peter Parker even get by in a world where no one remembers him, and apparently any and all record, whether in memory or in writing, of his existence has been wiped out? How does he rent an apartment? How does he get an education?
He has a GED book to get a diploma.
I was gonna say the GED book was interesting because I guess he never graduated high school because he doesn't exist. So
that I will agree. I think that part's a little bit strange. I'm okay with everyone not remembering Peter Parker's Spider-Man. I'm less okay with Peter Parker never existing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and so how does a man without a past? It's kind of like Ben Reilly as Spider-Man from the 90s, kind of thing. About a man without a past returning from oblivion, basically, and stepping into a new life as Spider-Man.
Yeah. And geekery inside me would think, oh, if he comes back as Ben Reilly, okay, that'd be kind of cool, but no, not really, because that's not what I want.
Yeah,
we did get pretty close to the Ben Reilly suit once that huge spider nanobot came back onto his normal clothes. So
yeah.
Yep, I noticed that too. But anyway, my rating is a 4.75. It's very close to perfect, but with apologies to other Adam, a whole free plot matters to me nearly as much as, if not more than, whatever emotional gratification I get out of watching the movie. So
fair enough, completely understandable, and that quarter star goes for that very reason. So
yeah.
Enough said on that one. I cannot wait to own this. I now own all the Spider-Man movies digitally. I just bought Amazing Spider-Man 2 to rewatch it a couple days ago, and I bought Far From Home as well because I had a bunch of Amazon credits, and I'm very much going to do that the minute that this comes out because we don't know when it's going to be on Disney Plus.
Right.
That's a very important question because the deal that they signed with Sony is for all movies as of 2022 to show up on Disney Plus. So anything before then, that's up in the air. It's entirely up to the deal they have with Stars and when that runs out. So, yep, we shall see.
How will the DVD release play into that, for that matter?
The DVD release will be just fine. And it'll go like normal because honestly, they've been releasing these on Blu-ray, since the beginning of this trilogy without any problems. They basically just share the revenue on that, and I don't know exactly how it works, but they even get a digital code in there too. So it's all working like any Blu-ray would. I just don't know exactly who handles that, but it's gonna happen. All right, gentlemen, I think that's just about it.
I'm good.
I think we did a good job of ending 2021 on a high note.
Yeah, agreed.
Yep. All right. Any other final thoughts here before we wrap things up?
Nope.
All right. Excellent. A very, very, very Merry Christmas and a happiest of New Year's to the two of you, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure getting through 2021 with you, and let's see how 2022 rolls.
Absolutely.
It's bound to be an improvement, he said, knocking hard on wood.
Yes, exactly. Knock on all the wood. Do that. Knock on that giant-sized man thing. That's whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, we will make this happen. And on that note, we thank you yet again, the listeners, at patreon.com/Comic Geek Speak. You are the best, and you keep the show going. And we thank you so much for that continued support of the show moving forward into a new year. Shane, you get to be Shane this time around.
Oh, good. I like Shane.
Exactly.
Visit us at comicgeekspeak.com to send us an email. The address is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. To leave a voicemail, as Drunk Cap has done, the number is 267-702-6642. Stop by thecomicforums.vanillacommunity.com. Follow us on youtube.com/comicgeekspeak. Let us know what you think of Spider-Man No Way Home. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. Thanks to everyone who contributes to the episode. As Ian has stated and Adam has pointed, it is because of you that we are able to do this. So thank you very much, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah to all. And as always, we'd like to... I've lost my place. As always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can.
Thwip.
Best theme song ever.
Oh, yeah.